there, my name is Olivier Wenker. I'm a physician, and in the Young Living world, I'm better known as Dr. Ollie. So today I want to talk somewhat about beauty, but for me, beauty, of course, is not just what you see on the outside. A lot of the beauty comes from the inside. And when you talk about the inside, a lot of your inside is also up here in your brain in form of memories. So sometimes people with very good memories can radiate inner beauty to the outer world. And today, I would like to share some of my memories that I had with my best friend, D.G.Young. So the first story makes me always chuckle a little bit. It's all about eating, but not the way you think eating. It's about eating dirt. When Gary walked on a new field and he was looking at maybe purchasing that field or that area, he would always bend down, he would grab the plants, he would just smash them between the fingers so the aromatic oils would come out of the plant, the leaves, and he would smell. So you would see this typical picture of him all around the world where he would just do like this. But in addition, what you don't see in these pictures, he would bend down again. He would grab some dirt and he would start putting it on his tongue and start feeling the dirt and tasting the dirt. And so we were in Mexico where he was looking to buy a whole valley with a very nice farm to create more of your beloved essential oils. And in Mexico, he said, "Ollie, I think now you're ready." And I said, "Ready for what?" He said, "Ready to eat dirt." So he made me bend down, he made me take some dirt, and he made me take the dirt in my mouth and taste it. And so first I thought, this is just crazy. This is one of those crazy things you heard about and you shake your head. But, you know, after a little while, after I tasted dirt, probably at a dozen different places on this farm, I was really able to start to distinguish the different tastes depending on whether it was really organic, whether it was more limestone, whether it was maybe something that had already grown too many plants and needed a little bit recovery time. So I'm tasting earth whenever I go on Young Living fields. I'm tasting just to get the different tastes, like you would taste different wines. And so after a while, I said, "Gary, you know, you taught me a lot today, but I kind of feel full. You know, I had probably 12 portions of dirt that I ate and I feel a little heavy in my stomach. So I think we're going to give it a pause for the rest of the day." And in typical Gary fashion, he would look at me, he would grin up to here and he'd say, "Well, Ollie, I didn't tell you everything. I told you need to taste the dirt so you can start distinguishing good dirt from bad dirt, because the secret of essential oils do start with a good soil." But what I didn't tell you is that typically when I take this on my tongue and I taste it in my mouth, I typically spit it out. And you have been swallowing all day long. So I was just watching you and say, "Oh, okay, maybe he's very hungry." You know, so Gary was always like a little jokester, and he would always watch me doing these kind of things. He was just watching me and grinning a little bit behind his ear and thinking, "Okay, this greenhorn here, you know, I need to teach him a few lessons." And he did. So thank you, Gary, for that. I carry now dirt from all around the world in me. So thanks to you. Thanks, Gary, for this little lesson you gave me. So another story I would like to tell you happened in Canada at the Fort Nelson Northern Lights essential oil farm. So Gary, Mary, and their two boys and we had the chance of spending about 3 weeks at the essential oil distillery in Northern Lights in Fort Nelson. And it was pretty cold. There was still snow out there. And we were trying to see the northern lights, you know, these beautiful lights in the sky. And we were there for about 2 weeks already, and we hadn't seen them. And so we went to bed around midnight. And then at 2 or 3 in the morning, suddenly somebody wakes me up, and I'm sleeping in the room with the two boys. And suddenly somebody's really shaking me, and I'm just getting up in my underwear, and I'm just running out, and I'm grabbing my little suitcase, my doctor's suitcase, thinking there's a medical emergency. I mean, why would you wake me up at 3 in the morning or so? And Gary's there, and he kind of looks at me once I run out of the room, and he said, "Well, you're a little lightly clothed, you know, because it's pretty cold out there, so maybe you want to put some socks on." So I said, "Okay, so there's no medical emergency." So I went back to the room, put my clothes on and socks and shoes and everything, and I walked out there, and Gary said, come with me." And we go outside, and oh my God, this beautiful northern lights go on, just this aura. It was just fantastic. And this was, again, typical Gary. He would just get up at night just to make sure that I could see these northern lights while I was sleeping, and then he would wake me up. So I said, Gary, thank you so much for this beautiful experience. He said, well, we're not done yet. This energy that you see in the sky, it's coming down and it's going into these huge trees that look like lightning rods. And these are black spruce trees in Fort Nelson. And so he said, let's go to the trees. So we walked for about 10 minutes down where the big trees were. And then he turned around, and it was pretty bright because the lights from the sky were brightening up the entire forest. And then he turns to me and said, Ollie, let's hug. And I was just thinking, all right, you might be my best friend, but we don't always just hug like in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. or 3:30 in the morning. So I walk up to him and I'm trying just to hug him. And he looks at me and said, no, not me, the trees. And so what we did, we walked over to the big trees and he said, okay, you go on one side, I go on another side. And we hugged the tree and we hold our hands on the other side. And then he kind of looked over and said, Ollie, do you feel it? Do you feel it? And it was just amazing. The energy you could feel like it was coming from the sky into these trees, into the two of us. And that just created, again, another bond that I could not have dreamed of. And it's just like these kind of stories warm my heart. They're in my brain, and they're part of probably my inner beauty, the way I would see that. Well, let's go to another story. So we were out there at the ranch that he has in Tabiona Valley in Utah. It's called the Skyrider Ranch. It was his favorite place on earth. And he loved to go with these 4x4s or side-by-sides, however you call them. These are different little vehicles that you can go into the dirt that have big tires. And so we're driving all through these roads that he created with the bulldozers in the mountain to really reach certain places and to look at wildlife. And we come home after about 2 or 3 hours, and I'm just looking down on myself, and I'm just full of dirt and mud and everything, because when you drive with Gary in a car like that, he takes no prisoners. I mean, he goes through the water, through the mud, there's no braking, and all the stuff is flying, and I'm just looking at myself all over, and it's just like entire patches of dirt in my hair, in my face, everywhere, on my jacket, on my shoes. I mean, don't even talk about the shoes. And Gary just looks at me and he grins up to here, and I just captured that moment, this happiness of just coming dirty, full of mud. And then he said, this is Savvy Minerals for Man. And so, of course, Savvy Minerals for me have always a deeper meaning, because I have all these memories on how he always loved that. When we did the men's camp and all the guys came back full of dirt, he was always grinning and smiling and always say, that's Savvy Minerals for Man. So another story from Skyrider Ranch, Gary started to slowly expand the original purchase that he had and purchase more and more land where he grew einkorn and sage and juniper and some other plants. But then there was a whole valley going down from the ranch down towards Duchesne Country. And one day he said, Ollie, let's go, let's take the car and let's drive down there. I just know someone who owns a lot of land down there. He might be willing to sell. So we drive down there, and then suddenly we go into a little dirt road and we go towards the mountain, and we start climbing up the mountain after we got out of the car. And suddenly we stand in front of this beautiful hieroglyph about 5,000-6,000 years old from the original native Indians. And Gary said to me, Ollie, from the first moment I was in this valley, I felt the spirits of the valley. And this is why I needed to be here, because the spirits are good, the frequency is good, the plants are great, the animals are great here. This is a happy place. And so we looked at these hieroglyphs, and these are pictures I have really never shown before. So enjoy those pictures. And, a short moment after we really enjoyed all these hieroglyphs, and he wanted to hire someone to come up there and restore some of those. They had been chipped off a little bit over the thousands of years. And then he turned around and he looked through that valley, and the valley was just so beautiful. And he just goes back and forth with his view and looks out there. And then he turns around, and I just captured this moment. I took a picture of him when he was looking down. I took the picture. In that moment, he turns around and said, Ollie, you know what? I'm going to have to buy this entire valley, because this is going to have such an important meaning for Young Living. And I cannot tell you what all is going on right now, but one thing you may know, this valley has become a sanctuary for wild animals, and it's called the Serengeti of Utah. But Young Living can still put some seeds down and grow some plants. And right now there's some interesting research being done in this valley, and also in the greenhouse at Young Living and in the Research Institute, to see especially one specific plant that is very, very resilient, that will probably grow pretty well in that valley. And you will hear much more in the future about this plant. I showed you some picture of the Tabiona Valley and Skyrider Ranch in the summer, but we also went there in the winter. And I don't know if you knew, but Gary was a fantastic skier and an absolute crazy snowmobiler. And so one day he said, okay, let's go all up to the ranch and let's take this big trailer with all these snowmobiles and let's go. And I have never been sitting on a snowmobile, so I had really no idea what to do. So Jacob was kind enough to teach me a little bit, and Gary showed me a few things, and it was Mary's snowmobile, so I was hoping that I wouldn't crash it or damage it in any way, shape or form. And so we just took off into the wilderness, and it was just like absolutely surreal, because the snow had freshly fallen. It was like a miraculous landscape, like this wonderland with snow on the trees, and you saw a few traces of animals going around, and we were just out there in nowhere. And then we took a little break because one of the snow machines broke down, and so Gary always used to fix everything on the spot. He immediately took off his helmet and started fixing the snowmobile, as you can see here. And then I was told to be really careful to follow Gary, because Gary was a really good snowmobiler, and he would do jumping and go up steep hills and steep hills down. And, you know, I was a beginner. It was my first time, although I got pretty comfortable on that thing. And then Gary said, oh, Ollie, just follow me. And I was just scratching my head. And I said, well, I was probably told not to follow him because he's a little more wild than I am. And so I'm really careful. And so I'm following him, and suddenly he disappears over like an edge. And I said, oh my God, he just jumped off the edge. So maybe I need to find a place where I'm not jumping off. And so I go a little left and the right, and I think I see a little place where it's probably okay. And I just go down there, but I'm still in the air. And I'm flying, and then of course I fall down, and instead of just putting on the speed on the snowmobile, I let it go. And so of course that immediately stopped the snowmobile. So I go over the handle of the snowmobile, and the snowmobile and I, we both kind of tumbling down this whole hill. And then luckily the snowmobile didn't end up on me, but I kind of luxated my shoulder. And then Gary comes immediately, because he was of course worried. And he said, Ollie, why didn't you follow me? I selected the most perfect spot where it's gently going down, and you're just jumping over that cliff. What are you doing? And so, so much, for not trusting a person. So, if Gary told you something, you always had to trust him, because he was just good on his heart. And even if he made jokes left and right, he would never endanger your life. So we come back to the lodge, and then of course my arm is hurting. So I'm doing a little this, and I already start putting some oils there. And Gary asked me, so what's going on with you? Are you hurting? And I said, yeah, he said, well, have you heard about essential oils called clove? And I said, yeah, clove is pretty cool. And he said, well, just take some clove under your tongue and we'll see what happens. And of course it was a vitality clove, right? And so I took a few drops, and he looked at me and said, no, I really mean a few drops. And so he said, just take the cap off, this white cap that you have, where the dropper counts, and just put a little stump in your mouth. So I just put it in my mouth, and there were like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 milliliters of clove in my mouth. And he said, now swish it around. And so I'm swishing the oil around, and after about 2 or 3 minutes says, how are you doing? And I could barely talk, because it's like with the dentist, when you get all these injections against pain, it almost like paralyzes your mouth and your tongue, and you can barely talk. And that's the feeling I had. But clearly my wellness proceeded pretty quickly, and I felt really good. And so Gary then said, okay, so now that you are taken care of, let's make a good chocolate protein banana shake. And so he takes like this organic milk, he takes like a huge, this bag of Pure Protein Complete chocolate powder, puts it in this huge mixer, puts in a couple bananas in there, and then he starts, close the lid and he starts mixing it up for all of us to have a good chocolate banana shake. And then he takes the lid off, he takes a spoon, tries to taste and says, yeah, it needs a little bit more chocolate. And he just puts more chocolate in there and he's talking to me and he's like not realizing that he didn't put the lid back on. And this thing is like full of chocolate shake, and he turns on the mixer, and within like 2 seconds, this whole thing just goes in the air. Most of it lands right back in there in the mixer again. But of course, it goes all over the place. And Gary has it in his hair and his face, and I have it all over. And so we start taking towels and we start kind of taking it off. And then immediately I think, oh my God, this is such a funny memory. I need to take a couple pictures. So I grab my phone and I start taking pictures. Just the moment after Gary took the stuff out of his face. But you still see here, you know, the whole mixer is full of that. And Gary was just laughing. It was the best banana chocolate shake we ever had. So anyway, it's just good memories. You see, I'm still smiling when I remember those memories. And yeah, for me, this is just inner beauty. It's part of inner beauty. So I've been so happy to share some of these memories with you with some of the pictures that I have. So you see, even me telling you these stories made me smile, because again, smile is inner beauty, and this inner beauty comes from the memories that I have of my best friends and all the crazy and stupid and cool stuff we did together when we were alone or together with a few friends. And it's just like, it's warming my heart, and it just radiates, hopefully, from me to you, so you can take over some of these stories and some of these memories of a really, really great guy. And maybe last but not least, I want to show you a picture I have also never shown anyone besides my wife. Is a picture that I took just after we buried Gary. And it's just to show you that Gary is in a place that he loved most, and you see the view that he has from his place here. And when people say, you know, Gary, he rests in peace, I always chuckle a little bit, because I do know Gary does not rest in peace. He is in peace, but he doesn't rest. I mean, if you knew Gary, he is up there doing stuff, guiding us down here. I often dream of him and get some guidance. We still have this connection. You know, these frequencies, these memories will not go away. And Gary's still with us, and I promised him to help. And I promised him to help spread the word of his vision and mission around the world. And that's what I do. And I'm always very happy when I can talk to people like you, because I know it's part of what Gary wanted me to do. So thank you so much for listening to me today in this little video, where I was able to share some of my real good memories and hopefully a little bit of my inner beauty, because of those good memories I have for my friend Gary. This is Dr. Ali. Thank you.